Hello, Matt.
Hello! Want to join me for quarantine karaoke? I was on Facebook, and well, I have to say, I didn't know Snoop Dogg was going to appear on Facebook's quarantine karaoke and offer $15,000 to each person that writes in the word cash. For the first 15 people, you will be saved by Snoop Dogg.
Cream. Cash rules everything around me. How about that? Is that what you wrote instead?
Yeah.
Did you get it? Did you win?
No, I
win
didn't.
The Snoop lottery?
I was hoping to raise money for this community land trust where we could decommodify housing. That $15,000 would save me a lot of time. I could just put it to that and put to immigrant folks into housing that are sleeping in their vans. But he's want to wave his financial cock around on the quarantine karaoke, which was, by the way, not a commodified space until he put his celebrity dick in that shit. And yeah, that's the thing. It's just a celebrity that's going to save us by giving us $15,000. When what we should expect is the government giving us our fucking stimulus and our penny buck.
Yeah.
It's like we relinquish our responsibility and obligation to the state to give us back what we deserve. Yeah. And we ask for rich people to bail us out.
Yeah, fuck these GoFundMe campaigns and Patreon accounts and crowdfunding bullshit. Universal, unconditional, basic income.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, just get this out of the way. Yeah.
Anyways.
Let us have our lives back, please.
Just the latest thing happening this summer, huh? It's been a great one.
A summer of hell stop awfulness.
Isn't this the best summer of your life?
Summer has been hell. Non-stop clusterfuck of catastrophes.
Yeah, this is quite the year, huh? Remember a few months ago, even before the lockdown, even before March 11th, it was already, everybody like, God, 2020 sucks.
Yeah,
it's only March.
It was already.
Yeah, it's only gotten worse since then. What a fucking shit show. Global pandemic, economic collapse, a depression like we haven't seen since, well, not in our lives at all, putting 2008 to shame. And of course, America doing what America loves to do, having the police lynch black people in public on camera repeatedly.
The list goes on and on. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, right? Just goes on and on and on.
Yeah, and new information about back in March when police in Rochester murdered Daniel Prude, put a hood over him and pinned him to the ground, and later died.
Strangely seems similar to the way they treated Al-Qaeda, put a bag on them, right?
Yeah.
That's how you treat your citizens.
Jacob Blake in Kenosha, shot in the back 7 times, trying to quell a dispute.
Trying to help white people from their own problems. Again, black people trying to bail out white people again.
What else has been happening? Oh, yeah. Well, it's 117 degrees there in
Riverside, today, California. Suicide, fratricide. It's a huge heat wave.
Undeniable evidence, everyday stories about eco-catastrophe around every corner.
But the tree in my front house is still green, so everything should be fine. So I'm looking out my window. It looks fine, Jesse. I don't know what you're complaining about. Because if it's green in my yard and there's a lawn that's green, we're fine. Fine. Suburbia is fine.
As long as photos on Instagram still look cute, everything's all right.
Put a filter on it. Put a filter on the fucking earth already.
Yeah. So record temperatures, wildfires, hurricanes, the ice sheets collapsing, on and on and on. It's undeniably one of the worst fucking years. And then there was the pleasure of the 2 political conventions in the last couple of weeks. There
was 2 Republican Party conventions. It was really exciting.
Yeah. One of them spared just over a minute to allow a non-Republican to speak, which was the only thing worth seeing.
Yeah, AOC 90 seconds. And many people didn't realize she wouldn't have been invited at all if it wasn't for Bernie Sanders choosing to pick her to do the nomination process, right?
It was a procedural formality. She was not invited as a speaker. It was part of the procedural formality of seconding the nomination for Sanders. That's it. Mm-hmm. He asked her. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, they would have preferred to give it to another Republican, another guest spot to a Republican, because
they're going after that 10% of the Republicans that didn't vote for Trump. The 10% is what they're spending all their time on.
I don't know about you, but I didn't watch any of.
I didn't watch. I watched AOC, but I ignored the whole thing. I pretty much blocked it out.
It's not dumbfounding enough that in the year 2000, George W. Bush was anointed president by the Supreme Court after losing the election. And how the fuck is this even acceptable? Mm-hmm. 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 Fast forward to 2016 and Donald Trump loses, but Well, good thing we have the racist backstop of the Electoral College to ensure that this tyrant can take the office. Just baffling that we live in a fucking world where some fucking racist, tyrannical celebrity douchebag can we even consider have a role like this in the world. But then, it normalizes things like this St. Louis couple, the personal injury attorneys who went out onto the lawn of their little mansion.
And a glorious series of memes followed.
Yeah.
Right? She had her little handgun and he had his like Uzi, his Terminator gun.
They're invited to speak on national television. How is that even?
But it's also an acknowledgement of like how the Republican Party knows its discourse better than the DNC.
Yeah.
They will feed their base. They will feed total depravity, total spectacle, but they will feed them the food. They'll feed the id. And the DNC's high-minded professional management bullshit stuff is like, we're going to go and double dip on Republicans again, just like 2016, and tell everybody that we'll be your favorite managers. And Trump at least knows that he needs to feed his fucking base. So he gives them the trolls of the Republican Party and gives them a speaking position. And that's really what it's about. And then it's his whole family speaking every night. Or our own private dinner table.
And then there was the 17-year-old white nationalist, a Trump fan, seen at Trump rallies recently and posing on social media with all of his guns.
He did clean some graffiti, so he's a good kid.
Celebrated by the police when he arrives and after he murders people. I suppose I don't know what needs to be said about this, other than this is not a surprise.
It's not. It's in some cases a doubling down of the trends that have already been going on in the Republican and Democratic Party. Yeah. So it's an advance of, remember, it's famously said, the Democratic Party has always been the second most enthusiastic member of the capitalist class. It's the other party that supports capital. Yeah. Other than Henry Wallace, who could have made the big break from the New Deal as vice president to FDR, was basically shoved out of running for president after FDR's death and installing, someone like Truman. It gives you an idea of like how capital's really at the heart of both political parties, and they're just doubling down on the trajectories they've been on for quite some time.
Things that are happening out in the open that we just have to watch unfold, like the sabotaging of the Postal Service and Steve Bannon, another one of the Trump entourage of criminals grifters. Another grifter gets arrested, but so what? The show just keeps going on.
He gets arrested from taking money which didn't go to building the wall. Just using their celebrity to basically rake it in from folks that are obviously fairly dumb and can't read that they're being played, and is arrested on a boat with another wealthy person. It's just an example of how these celebrity grifters really rely on a kind of passivity and a kind of lack of awareness that they're being manipulated like it's like some type of heroin needle. It's just being injected again and again.
It's nearly impossible not to recognize that there's something horribly wrong with the way the world is organized. There's something horribly amiss. And unfortunately, because the whole culture is under the control of capitalist managers and they have megaphones, they have a monopoly on the megaphones, there are no voices of reality, clarity, reason,
empathy even.
So again, no surprise that we have another bubbling up of some absurd conspiracy theory like QAnon.
And what you end up saying is like, oh my God, this is a total fucking psychosis. Yeah. It's a shared psychosis among millions of people that have been abducted like by alien ideas, right?
Yeah. It's
prodded like the cows in the anus to see what's there. It's an abduction. Yeah. It's a kind of psychic abduction of people.
Yeah. And it is taxing and tiring and exhausting to keep up with how fucking horrible shit is. And yes, there are a lot of folks who do really good work day in and day out to identify, to diagram, to diagnose, and to lay out the carcass of the capitalist hellscape. And it's useful to have a clear understanding of that. But we can't spend all our time there. We have to, one, say, no fucking shit. Identify it clearly, no fucking shit. Now let's fucking build something else. So part of what we always try to do in our discussions is spend more time on solutions and at least equal, if not more energy pointing towards clarity around how we get out of this fucking mess.
A utopian horizon.
Yeah.
A utopian horizon, and be open with that.
Yeah.
Clearly, a liberal outlook isn't going to work, and we all know a conservative outlook is going to look. I mean, remember, liberalism is just the affirmative action version of capitalism. It won't do. Only socialism, only utopia will do.
Yeah.
And any outlook that creates safe spaces for really bad ideas, like liberalism does, it creates safe spaces for capitalism, is really nasty and horrible as an idea.
Yeah.
The trajectory is not a happy one.
Yeah. Our diagnosis, we've discussed over the years, is a deep systems diagnosis, that these things that are wrong with the world and the things that continue to unfold every day as evidence of what's wrong with the world are not new. And they're not all about individual actors, that there are deep systems sources for this misery and this despair. So 2020 is the clusterfuck that it is because of what we call the poison pyramid. We had talked about this in the first few episodes.
The first 3 episodes, exactly. So we're coming back to this again.
Because shit's so fucked up right now, I thought it would be good to sort of revisit the diagnosis part of our set of idea shapes. So the triangle icon in the artwork refers to the poison pyramid.
An idea shape.
An idea shape, just a signifier for a set of bigger ideas to encapsulate a diagnosis like what is going on with the world. And the 3 things that outline this idea shape are religion, capitalism, and celebrity. The poison pyramid: religion, capitalism, celebrity. I can't think of anything I've seen, probably in the last decade that hasn't embodied this idea shape more clearly than on June 1st when Donald Trump had people gassed and the cops clear out the path so that he could go do this photo op where he shook a Bible in front of a church.
This is important because wasn't he in the basement because they had told him that, the White House is going to be lit on fire like it's the War of 1812?
Yep.
So he doubles down on the semiotics of religion, capitalism, and celebrity while he's under attack by protesters, right? Fearing anarchist takeover of the White House. So he comes out and doubling down on this by waving it. It's like a giant penis for him.
Remember, this is the world. This is the design of the world.
St. John's Church or Donald Trump's mushroom penis?
Both.
Oh, we know what his penis looks like. It looks like a smashed turtle, we've been told.
All right, enough. We don't want to picture that. The thing about this idea shape that points to an anarchist analysis, that the problems compounding and continuing in the world are about hierarchy, and that these 3 things in the world, religion, capitalism, celebrity, that we made, they're not just naturally occurring parts of the cosmos. These are constructs of civilization.
They're oscillating blenders, right? That just spin and spin and spin. And so they generate internal hierarchies inside those concepts. We've said on the show prior that the reason why capitalism is so important to talk about is because it's the most powerful hierarchy generating machine. And these also generate inside of themselves, like a combustion engine, a kind of internal hierarchy of them.
These are 3 nodes in a machine that just reproduces all kinds of systems of hierarchy. We're taught by these systems, and we always have been, to think that, to understand that hierarchy and competition and these things are all part of human nature. We talked about this before.
They're normal. This is all normal. Snoop Dogg, bail me out. It's all normal. What's not normal is me to ask for the government to have an appropriate response to the death cult of COVID. No, I'll wait online for someone to throw me cash. That's normal.
But these are the home of hierarchy, not human nature. We're taught that hierarchy and
natural
domination, these are outgrowths of
Peterson's
just human
fucking
nature.
Lobster.
Fuck off. No, some fucking dick made this shit up. Fucking reject that premise. At the base of this pyramid, or is the most entrenched layer of it, is religion. Religion is sort of undergirds this whole construct of the poison pyramid, this notion of this fictional patriarchal sky daddy.
Oh, definitely. And Murray Bookchin locates that in his most famous and most celebrated book, Ecology of Freedom, that patriarchy and religion are the 2 initial emergent forms of hierarchy in human society that emerge and that are artificially created out of constitutive historical moments. The invention of the plow, or the worry of scarcity and death, and fear as a fear center. And these didn't exist in prior hunter-gatherer societies, but they emerged, from a society that was largely egalitarian. Bookchin's idea, patriarchy and religion are two things that kind of co-evolve. It's hard to know which one came first because men started to dominate weaponry, and that gave them the kind of the powers over life and death. And the ability to use weapons created a kind of a material distance between women's power and men's power. And that over time, misogyny and patriarchy started to form. And I think that might have been simultaneous with religion. Remember, Bookchin writes about this, that old people dying were afraid of being thrown away by their tribe. And one way to protect yourself when you're not producing labor for the tribe is to have some special bridge to the afterlife. Right? Some imagined afterlife. And so therefore you have to take care of me because I'll be thrown away.
Yeah.
Right.
These are fictions. In religions, whenever and however they originate, either as an outgrowth of a patriarchal set of evolving relations in human society, they're fictions.
That's not to say they don't have consequences. They do have consequences. Right. They do become real over time, but they're invented as fictions. Yes. They're not naturally occurring in the human genome.
Yeah.
That's the key. That's the key.
Yeah. And they can't be used to create and impose rules on reality. They're created out of sets of fears, whether that's fears about scarcity or fears about
death,
impermanence, just existential dread. Wherever the seed for this unknowing that you fill, this gap that you fill with religion, is a fiction.
It's also why we called our first episode on religion for the Poison Pyramid, the desire for certainty. Yeah. It's this desire for certainty that is, the uncertainty is the real fear. Yeah. It's the not knowingness that is part of who we are. And if you're not willing to embrace it, you have to move to some forms of certainty.
And it's my contention that in the constructions of religion and of patriarchal authorities, in some fictitious explanation to quell that uncertainty, that is where humanity took a wrong turn. And since then, we've been fucked. We've been on the road to extinction.
Nowhereville.
And we're getting real fucking close. Self-fulfilling prophecies. They want to bring about Armageddon, and here comes the rapture.
We've been asleep while someone else has been playing chess without our moves, right?
Yeah. So anyways, religion, capitalism, celebrity, we point to as the pillars of this hierarchical hegemony.
This idea shape called the Poison Pyramid.
Yeah. Tent poles in a vast, all-encompassing pyramid scheme built from unjust hierarchies. They're the macro systems that shape the design of the world and determine the distribution of resources. This is where it becomes really insidious. It's not just some private exercise of belief.
These affect people that aren't religious. Yeah, people that aren't religious are being pegged by these.
People that aren't capitalists, that aren't religious, that aren't celebrities.
Yeah, they're so powerful, there's no opt-out of them.
There's no
opt-out all of these. There's such powerful moving hierarchy machines that you just get pushed in and chopped up.
This idea shape, the Poison Pyramid, is a way to identify the real serious structural flaws in the design of the world. And these serious structural flaws in the foundation of how the world has been built are, we call the Poison Pyramid. And these are the things that have determined the shape of the world. These are the things that we have designed. These are the systems we've decided or have been decided for us collectively over time to be how we will organize the world.
This is the underlying pattern.
Yeah.
We don't notice under the hubbub of speed, like we were talking about how many things are happening in the summer that we can't slow down time. And so we don't see these patterns. But these are the underlying patterns that ritualistically pull us into dark drives, dark directions, into kind of a deathscape. And if we don't acknowledge these as patterns of influence, we can't move out of them.
David Graeber's untimely passing at the age of 59 reminded of a quote of his: "The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently." That's the thing. These things are things that we made. We can decide to make something different.
Graeber's an example of someone who wasn't as corrupted by celebrity as many other people are, especially among the left. I mean, he would talk to us, he followed us on our podcast, and also he was very generous with his time. He understood that his writing, the way he operated had to be within an anarchist praxis. And I remember several events where he'd speak at where he just kind of join the crowd and not sit in the chair and be stared at. And that's a good ethos for us all, I think, to model from. And there's a moving article by James Butler from Navarro Radio that I'll post saying Graeber was the opposite of a cynic.
Yeah.
And there's no term for it because we're such a dystopian hellscape that we don't have a term for something that is real, that's idealistic, but not naive. Because when we say it's idealistic, if he's an idealist person, he's naive. It's immediately assumed as a pejorative, just like how we assume utopia is a pejorative phrase. There's no reason why they can't be something more than just pejorative. Yeah. But, as an example of someone who didn't act like a shitbag. And there's a lot of people on the left that act like shitbags.
Thanks, shitbag.
He's an example of that idea. And so we certainly have an ability and a right to remake the world as we see fit under a consensus-driven, democratic, direct, open process of amelioration and transformation.
Religion, capitalism, celebrity. It's an idea shape that's offered up in the context of a long lineage of emancipatory social science and radical anarchist thinking. So yes, like David Graeber's thinking, and yes, lineage of Marxist analysis, no fucking shit, Karl Marx. But also this is related to the ideas about and more complicated understandings of the interacting forces of systems of hierarchy in the world. So, it's related again to the social ecological model. It's related to the idea of a matrix of domination or a matrix of oppression, the terms coined by Patricia Hill Collins in her book, Black Feminist Thought, Knowledge, Consciousness, and the Politics of Empowerment, is a way to talk about interconnected issues of oppression. Also, intersectionality, originally coined by Kimberly Williams Crenshaw in 1989 in a paper written for the University of Chicago Legal Forum called Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black Feminist Critique of Anti-Discrimination Doctrine.
Came out of an actual court case where she's trying to come up with a on-the-spot analogy as to why this Black woman is in between two intersections, her gender and her race.
Yeah, and all of the long lineage of work in the social sciences talking about systemic and or structural oppression. So that's, what we call this the poison pyramid. It is a three-dimensional structure that is layers and layers of schemes to keep people oppressed. Celebrity, capitalism, religion are just three nodes that sort of describe the outline of it, but it is a shape that we would use to describe all of the things that are
discriminatory, that are filled with prejudice, that belie a good faith understanding of reciprocity and human love.
Yeah, and it points to the root causes of compounding systems of oppression. The poison pyramid identified these things as the things that contain and codify all forms of bigotry, prejudice, discrimination. So racism, sexism, misogyny, classism, xenophobia, homo-antagonism, trans-antagonism, heterosexism, ethnocentrism, ageism, ableism, religious discrimination, including Islamophobia and anti-Semitism.
And fatphobia. It's a real thing.
Right? Yeah. These are all things that are part of the poison pyramid, contained within this. It gets a little long-winded to say all of those things in a big, long list. So it's just the idea shape is a sort of shorthand to talk about those things by identifying.
Very, very much like our idea shape with the golden square. It includes complexity underneath the hood. Exactly. It doesn't belie that this is the only thing that's there. It suggests within itself interior structures of oppression.
But part of all of this is hierarchy. It's systems of hierarchy. Hierarchy is the problem. And yes, I think we have a shared understanding that capitalism is the beating heart of this, right? Is the engine.
I guess where I trace out farther from the idea shape classically is organized religion versus unorganized religions, or hierarchical versus non-hierarchical religions. I don't want to necessarily throw away religion as a personal belief, because I do think we have to create large social movements, and social movements will have religious people in them. But there's no doubt we should look at, hey, Unitarian Christians versus evangelical Christians. One is very anti-authoritarian, one is very authoritarian.
Yeah.
And we have to look at the differences between that. Yeah. That's an area of where there's some complexity in terms of how we define the term. I think when it comes to capitalism or celebrity, Jesse and I are shared that in every consequence, it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like it's completely a bad thing. But religion is so broad, so deep that it can have non-hierarchical aspects within religion. It doesn't always have to be hierarchical, but with celebrity is always about hierarchy. Capitalism is always about hierarchy. And the manifestations of religion that we do see as dominant in American society as well as the world is authoritarian.
Yeah.
A lot of religions are authoritarian. They are hierarchy based. And they include some of the ageism and sexism and racism that we can see in other religions and other cultures. Xenophobia for other religions, where that's dominated as kind of an input device. But I would say, on the whole, capitalism is the beating heart of the poison pyramid, without a doubt.
Yeah. And celebrities are like cars. They dominate our lives, they're ruining everything, and they only exist because we invented them.
They can be fun and give us pleasure, but even the socially conscious ones are net harm to all of us.
And like every car that's manufactured, every celebrity is manufactured. They take the labor of thousands of people to make a celebrity. And we just keep making unnecessary new celebrities every year.
And we give them our time.
Yeah.
We call this the attention economy. Well, isn't that a problem that we actually have an attention economy? Because it means that you're not attending to the people that you love in your house or that are across the street.
Yeah.
Instead of caring about your neighbor, they're cutting themselves in the bathroom because you're worried about Kim Kardashian hitting $1 billion. Create a fucking GoFundMe page for this person. This is actually how bad it is. Young millennials, or I guess Generation Z, wanted to create $1 billion fund for make sure that the youngest Kardashian's a billionaire, right? The first female woman of color billionaire. It's like, oh, fuck, this is sad.
One way, additionally, to help understand how all of these things interact and feed in and out of each other, circulate the ongoing, perpetual construction and reinforcement of hierarchy and domination and oppression, is returning to the wise words of Ruth Wilson Gilmore. We've quoted a few times: capitalism requires inequality and racism enshrines it. If we were to expand upon that, I would say capitalism requires inequality, obviously, and religion inaugurates it, racism enshrines it, patriarchy reinforces it, and fame sells it.
And that's the big part. That's the great divergence. Is the left tends not to look at celebrity as a problem.
Right.
I think this is where this podcast is different than other shows, is we think
Yeah.
fame and celebrity worship, even among the left, is really toxic. And actually, it's selling of all of these institutions that are horrible.
Yeah. Any social structure that relies on the domination of one or a few people over a multitude of folks is going to poison our world. And we need to get rid of it.
Mhm.
It is part of the problem. It is one and the same with what has ruined the world so far.
Mhm.
So we can't continue to replicate systems of dominance and hierarchy.
As we've talked about before, capitalism prevents freedom, innovation, and flourishing. It produces violence and waste and misery. It's hierarchical and it's a replicating machine. We don't need it. It's horrible. And it's a death cult. It's an engine that's fueled by ignorance, hatred, and fear. And it's racing towards the extermination of humanity. We are in dangerous territory because of these poison pyramids.
We need to fucking get off of this ship. We talked about this next idea previously, but here's a good point to relook at a theory of emancipatory struggle. So demolishing this poison pyramid, it seems inescapable, right? It's hard enough to think about, have discourse about action towards getting rid of capitalism, let alone religion and celebrity. Holy shit, we don't even talk about, like you said, we don't even acknowledge that celebrity is a problem. We don't even acknowledge that religion is a seedbed of all systems of hierarchy in the world. Mm-hmm. Holy shit, how are we going to fucking do this? Well, one of the ways I think about this is that, yes, our world has been shaped by the poison pyramid, that mythologies of hierarchy become justifications for relations of dominance, which create systems of oppression maintained through institutions of violence. Therefore, we must work to undo compounding layers of harm concurrently, but in order of priority, through abolishing institutions of violence, dismantling systems of oppression, eroding relations of dominance, and erasing mythologies of hierarchy. We need to do all of those things. We need to be pointed towards all of those things.
Yes, totally. Religious folks and celebrities can help move culture in an emancipatory direction. We have to use the levers that we got.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the building of an egalitarian world will require the eroding of these relations of dominance that are helping us to solve that dominance, right?
Yeah.
It seems paradoxical, but necessary in the material ground that we have. This is the terrain of capitalism, and we have to erase these mythologies of hierarchy while using the leverage that we got, right? And we can talk about it too with the NBA strikes as an example of that, where one hierarchy of worship, Obama, distangles and disrupts a natural attempt at a general strike coming from black athletes in the NBA.
Yeah.
That's fucked up.
Yeah. We've talked about before how your position in relation to religion is agnostic.
Oh, I'm definitely agnostic. I don't think we know shit.
Yeah.
I feel like as an agnostic, I'm the one that embraces uncertainty the most.
Yeah.
Because it's from a place of humility and being humble. And so I think regardless of whether you're a non-believer or an atheist, that we can still look for people that are religious. Cornel West is a devout Christian.
Mm-hmm.
He just happens to have an anti-authoritarian tradition that is very much in keeping with Jesus's actual teachings, which are being ignored by bullshit actors of the prosperity doctrine.
Yeah.
That prosperity gospel shit is the very antithesis of Jesus's teachings, right? Jesus largely went around and did shit. He actually helped people. He wasn't sermonizing, telling you that you needed a lawyer to get health care.
Yeah.
Like fucking Joe Kennedy telling you this is what we need, a lawyer to get you health care. Fuck you. Give me my Green New Deal. Get out of the way. Ed Markey comes in and busts your nut. Right. And so we need celebrities, certainly. We need religious figures, certainly. But ultimately, we don't want our lives to be defined by those hierarchies. We want to erode them eventually.
Yeah, yeah. And so I, as someone who would call themselves, as the most reasonable description, say anti-theist.
Yeah.
Someone actively opposed to organized religion and to the idea of deities at all and the worship of deities at all.
I think you said quite rightly, the problem with the way in which we talk about whether you're atheist or agnostic or whether you're religious is that it automatically narrows what the universe holds to us, which is a God relationship. We could be based on a different relationship beyond a kind of God or sky daddy. And so that's already a narrowing of human consciousness. And I agree with that.
Yeah. And so, look, I have love and patience for you as an agnostic and even believers as long as we are oriented towards direction on the anti-capitalist compass.
Yes. Anti-authoritarian, egalitarian,
yes.
Reciprocity.
Yes. Yes, again, ultimately, we need to erode relations of dominance, like celebrity, and we need to erase mythologies of hierarchy, like religion. Mm-hmm. But yes, we're not there yet. So we got to get the fucking police out of the way first, and we got to move past capitalism.
And it's with an understanding that religion tries to answer really big questions that humans really want answered. And that's a real reasonable thing to think that all matter has a mother. But science doesn't have the equipment net to ask those bigger questions either. So I feel like let's create a society where we can have these huge debates about what the universe is and why we exist. I think those are reasonably cool things to do. But right now, people can't get food. People can't get shelter. People can't get healthcare. People can't get a college degree.
Give me food, shelter, healthcare, and education. Decommodify those things, and yes, let's spend all day fucking debating about the meaning of the...
That's part of the utopian sphere, is having these wonderful debates about theology or disbelief or atheism and what the universe offers us, and we're just like, we got to take care of the bread and potato stuff. It's like, we don't even have the bread and roses.
Yeah.
So let's just stop, really.
Let's fucking get that shit first. Obviously, again, fuck this shit. Let's get off of this death.
Everything must change. Everything must change. To do this, everything must change.
What we've hinted at a few times in conversations in the last few weeks are parts of what I call a functional ecological theory of class dynamics and collective agency. So building upon some of the things we've talked about from Eric Olin Wright's work, where he identified collective agency as the key to how we might activate an anti-capitalist direction to build the class solidarity and political capacity necessary to erode capitalism. Understanding class, understanding the dynamics at play and how to mobilize, I think, is important and useful. And so what I want to share is just a brief outline of this functional ecological theory of class dynamics. So in my estimation, in the 21st century, in this reality of the neoliberal capitalist hellscape, What's most useful in understanding class are three broad typologies that provide the most salient general understanding of the locations of potential agency in the world. So the three typologies I would identify are wage slaves, influencers, and tyrants. Wage slaves are everybody who pays rent. Wage slaves do productive work, have jobs, have debt, pay rent, and their dream is probably one day to become rich and famous. Influencers, the influencer class, they do ideology work. They have careers, they have wealth. These are the folks we're talking about when we talk about wealth gap.
Pensions. They have potentially passive income. They might retire with a passive income. They might own extra property,
Right.
but they're basically the kind of glorified managers that the working class and wage slaves naturally detest.
Yeah, it's a broad category. So this would include a broad range of income and wealth. The unifying thing among the influencer class, though, would be that they all have some degree of influence over the lives of other folks.
Mhm.
So all kinds of folks, even from what we classically call middle class income bracket folks who make $50,000, $60,000 a year, but they have employees under their purview at work. They're potential members of the influencer
They're
class.
the Elizabeth Warrens of the world. They're the people that people like wage slaves have to listen to all the time, right?
Yeah.
And that couch all their language in equity and in justice, but are doing the very opposite of the things they pretend to believe in.
Yeah. So they're landlords, supervisors, managers, bosses, entrepreneurs, so forth and so on. So yes, it includes millionaires and billionaires, athletes and celebrities and Snoop Dogg and all of them, but also people you probably report to at work. Tyrants at the top of this scheme, they do mythology work. They don't do any sort of real work.
Mhm.
They own companies and have capital. They are what we classically refer to as the ruling elite. They're the financiers of the world.
And they carefully coif their personal histories to make it sound like they came from nothing. So like Jeff Bezos, well,
Yeah.
he came from money. He wasn't like working in his fucking garage. He got money to start up his business. It wasn't like he just moved up the ladder. He wasn't a peasant. And many of the people that are the tyrants like Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, they came from upwardly wealthy, upwardly middle-class families. But they instead create and coif and massage this mythology about the rugged individualist.
Yeah.
And that's really what they really have to hold on to, is that they deserve it, that they're the smart ones. They know how best to use money, so don't give it to the government.
Right. But that was what Elon Musk, one of the tyrants,
Mhm.
said recently, right?
We can coup when we want. I don't care about fucking Bolivia.
He was also saying stuff about how there shouldn't be any more social welfare as well. This understanding of these typologies is that the greatest potential for change exists within the influencer class, that the wage slave class has untapped or latent power. This is most of humanity. Most of us are indebted, pay rent, and don't have wealth, live paycheck to paycheck if we can get by, or trying to make ends meet. But we don't have the means or the freedom necessary to functionalize our power. We don't have the free time to do something with it, right? To do something about shit. We don't have leverage. We're fucking working our whole lives. But the influencers, the influencer class, yes, they hold contradictory and conflicting positions within society. Often they will be the ones we hear espousing potentially emancipatory values or kindness, but at the same time being tyrants to others privately. My contention is that a necessary approach we need to have is to try to redirect. And that I would argue that we don't have interaction with the tyrants. They're a lost cause. They're fucking gone.
They have the least amount of empathy. They have the least amount of everyday interactions meaningfully with wage slaves.
Yeah.
They're not even in touch with them. But a lot of the influencers have family with healthcare concerns, or they struggle with their money and guilt with their money because, these cousins and neighbors and relatives, they don't have what they have and they know it's there.
Yeah. The influencer class, this sort of buffer between the tyrants are attempting to rule as gods over the earth and the mass of the rest of us, they're the ones that hold the Overton window. They're the ones who make culture. The makers of culture make culture. The folks who are the cops, the bosses, the landlords, the supervisors, the managers, administrators, corporate automatons, they are the ones who control our lives, who are actively building the cages around what is possible. They have the ability. They have a choice. I don't have a choice. An influencer has a choice. An influencer, someone who holds dominion over other people's lives, even if it's a partial sort of dominion, right? Part of what we excuse all the time in the tyranny of bosses is that, well, that's just at work. I just have to put up with it for the 8 hours a day, right? Fuck that, though. Why does someone have dominion over your life in any hours of the fucking day? Fuck that shit. They have a choice to actively reinforce the systems of hierarchy, to actively buttress the poison pyramid.
They can create new lines of solidarity. They don't have to choose the tyrants. And we've seen the cases where celebrities call out those tyrants. But they often choose to just remain silent, choosing neither solidarity, just in their Ellen DeGeneres bubble.
Some of them, too, might be too close to the tyrant class. They may also be lost causes, but they need to fucking quit. When we're making demands, they are the ones we're making demands to. When you're making demands at work, you're making demands to the boss.
The fundamental thing is, where's the new lines of solidarity? Because we have to have both the Overton window be reshaped by these kind of celebrity class, manager class type persons, all right? This is a different construct than a middle class persona, because many people in the middle class could just be people in unions that are wage slaves, right? It doesn't mean that they have cultural power and shaping reality. So we need to get them to move their solidarity to us, 100%. So we can take down the tyrants. Otherwise, no go.
That's a good way to distinguish. Old idea of working class and middle class and white collar workers and blue collar workers. It's about the amount of equity and distribution of resources, right?
The shaping of decorum. I sometimes say this about liberals is they're very obsessed with decorum. They're always about tone and symbols. It's the tone and symbol people. And there's some power to that because you're shaping norms. We need the norms to be shaped towards a socialist, egalitarian, ecological framework. And so we will need them to jump ship. And when members of the ruling class jump ship, that's when the socialist horizon starts to open up again. We need them to jump ship. And we saw that with LeBron James, who, regardless of how much money you have, like a football player was just recently harassed by 2 cops who thought that that wasn't the house that he was going to. And it's an example of like Henry Louis Gates, who is a celebrity, who was called on cops by his neighbors who didn't know that he actually lived at his house. So that radicalization that's occurring, because no matter how wealthy you are, you're still a black person in this country. And that means a whole lot of scary things. And you can be LeBron James, and he's super famous, but he's seen other people less famous be harassed and be black and be an athlete. And he's aware that this is part of a solidarity that we have to reform. And you can have Obama try to shut stuff down, but you can have people like LeBron that could hopefully restart that wildcat strike. And it doesn't look like it's happening, but we have to deal with the problem of Hollywood and the university. We have to deal with celebrity. We have to acknowledge that all bosses are tyrants and celebrities are assholes. Everyone can cause harm. Hierarchy is a problem. But at the end of the day, we need solidarity to form from them to us. Or it's a no-go. We're not going to get anywhere.
Again, your boss, the company says, we stand with Black lives, Black Lives Matter, and that...
racism is an epidemic. So we've had a bunch of city councils all go into this huge surge of saying racism is an epidemic. Yeah, but what are you going to do about it? Are you supporting the Inland Equity Community Land Trust? Hey, we're right here.
Fuck off. Give your company to the workers.
Exactly. That's all it is. Blaze Pizza, I don't care that you got straws, you got rid of them. That's fine. Give your company to the fucking workers.
I
don't care about your straws.
There's a lot of shouting in this one. What are you trying to be, the boss here?
Just do it.
Yes, Hollywood and university, there's a whole collection of the influencer class that makes their lives in Hollywood and university systems, and they have the agency to make decisions to start to shape those institutions differently, to start removing hierarchy from those institutions and remaking culture in a serious way. But they've got to make a decision. They've got to, like you said, have solidarity with wage slaves and start to build that and start to actually fucking see us. This is the key, right? Stop chasing power. See us. We're fucking human beings too.
Stop making us invisible.
This is the thing that power does. Power makes other people invisible. And anyone can see this. You observe in your own lives, in your workplaces, you see people with power. How easy are they to access? Because we know that the more power you get, the less time you have for other folks, the less you're likely to give.
Because you're busy maintaining your power and growing it. It's like you're a dragon collecting all your gold. You're just in the hoarding mentality of trying to keep up with your system of power and fame, and you forget about everyone else.
So the other thing that's been part of this vortex of catastrophes and cultural noise over the summer has been this discourse about let's say discourse in quotes, because again, I don't think there's actual discourse in culture. There's just the
Something
monopoly
they
of
say.
megaphones in the attention economy. So you have to have enough woofy to even be led in the door to participate in discourse. But there's this bullshit about cancel culture, all kinds of noise floating around about cancel culture. Then, oh no, Ellen's going to get canceled.
The problem with this, much like Harvey Weinstein, is people are not looking at the problem of why people are made invisible at Ellen DeGeneres' workspace. She makes $80 to $90 million a year. It's a giant machine. They're giving out tickets and plane rides to Disney, and everybody's winning and everybody's nice. But the workers are being made invisible because she has these predators, her producers, that were assaulting, grabbing, harassing, sexually harassing, intimidating, denying work leave and firing people for taking sick leave, for all kinds of things, because they were invisible because she could be above it all, because she wasn't egalitarian. What if that $70, $80 million was going to all the workers? Said, I'll be the celebrity, but I'll share the means of production because the money she's making is on the back of her workers who are invisible, getting sexually harassed and all of those things. So that's what's going on, is like, once again, like Harvey Weinstein, we make it about the individual, about the celebrity. Is it really her, or is this giant chain of capitalism really what's making the workplace a horrible place? These workspaces all have the same problems. They're not egalitarian.
And progressive and socialist spaces and activist groups aren't immune from this.
Yes.
We see this in democratic socialist groups. We see this in the Bernie Sanders campaign. What we tend to see happen all the time, too, is that people are trying to chase down, whether it's the Weinstein Company or Ellen or Bernie Sanders campaign or anywhere else, people are trying to chase down individual responsibility.
The bad apples. It's a bad apple problem, right? It's not the institution. It's not that you're all chasing woofy and that you're all using your woofy when you get it to hurt others and making people invisible. It's that you just don't have egalitarian workplaces. Ellen would never have the problem she has, regardless of whether she's nice or not nice. She also would probably be nice regardless, because she had to reciprocate in an egalitarian workplace. Harvey would have been kicked out, censored. This is possible. It could have been possible that Harvey Weinstein followed one of the coworkers. They had a group session. There was restorative justice. He was kept in the crew as a talented staff, but he never went on to harass anyone else because he didn't have the power to do it again. And we want to make it about the individual, but we don't make it about the way in which capitalism within these structures reinforces celebrity, that reinforces capitalism, reinforces these hierarchies. It's like a giant fucking washing machine that puts everybody in and nobody ever gets dried out.
Everybody gets beat up.
Everybody gets beat up. And this is the thing, is if we look at the celebrity worship, we can't just make it about the individual. Nobody in any of the articles, even the most radical articles on Ellen DeGeneres controversy, are saying that, she should make a co-op out of her workplace. Like, I know she's famous, but she doesn't deserve all that money. Why are you giving all this money to charities when you can give it to your coworkers?
There's all this hand-wringing about individual actions and individual sites of harm. One thing that's important in this whole story is to, again, recognize that anybody can cause harm. So being lesbian, being queer, your identity doesn't...
just because you're from a historically marginalized group doesn't mean that you won't have power or can have power, because there's sometimes an economy that privileges those oppressions. Marginalization has been commodified within university. And so you can have a real dick who's an African-American scholar who's sexually harassing one of his grad students. Now, he might be from a historically marginalized group of people, but the power that he has at the workplace over someone else's TA-ship, their dissertation, is a corrupting power. And that's the real problem. It's the power, it's the balance of power that becomes a problem.
It is in the foundation, the design of the system is hierarchical. It is a structural problem, not individual problems. We can chase bad apples down the street.
Not one article's ever telling Ellen, why don't you turn your place to a co-op? Because she could be a celebrity and have a co-op. They could all make the same pay. Why not? I mean, you could have a celebrity. I mean, we're probably going to have socialism that still has the problem of celebrity, but it could be such that literally every one of the workplaces, those people could have really good pensions, really good health care, and maybe even be millionaires because she's clearing out $70 million a year. So it's the question of, like, why look at her as an individual?
My contention is that this phenomenon about cancel culture, as it's known, is really just the very awkward beginnings of culturally trying to reckon with celebrity, just in the very surface kind of way. But celebrity is clearly a poisoning thing. The attention economy is clearly fucked up. This is no fucking way to organize the world.
The idea of the cancel culture is like, I'm going to punish the celebrity by making them a non-celebrity when they might have so much wealth that it won't matter. And also, why did you create a celebrity in the first place?
Exactly. What are you being canceled from? Actually, you're canceled. You were already constructed.
They already took money from you. Yeah. You already watched a couple YouTube ads that filled up their bank account a little bit more.
So we'll talk about this more, but generally I'd say that I would be totally in favor of a cancel culture if it meant that we're canceling the police, canceling the patriarchy,
yes,
canceling white supremacy.
Hallelujah.
Cancel fossil fuel companies.
Tasty.
Cancel borders. Cancel the rent.
Cancel it all, motherfuckers. Cancel all these sources. Yeah, absolutely. Cancel these sites of oppression.
Yes.
That then recreate new hierarchies that then creates artificial scarcity that shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
When it comes to food, shelter, healthcare, and education.
We need to be fighting for the golden square, a no bullshit blueprint for socialism. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, enshrined as essential human rights, fully decommodified, zero cost, cost. Your bill is zero your whole life.
We shouldn't want to be rich or famous. We should just want to be free.
Yes. Yes, wildcat strikes in sports. More of that, please. Hopefully those will help to open the floodgates towards a general strike. We all need to fucking strike. We need to unite, fight, build a general strike so we can finally abolish the motherfucking cost of living.
Shouldn't even exist as a phrase.
No. We need to defund the police, care for the people, cancel the rent, forgive the debt, and demand a radical global Green New Deal.
And all kinds of strikes, like a rent strike, a debt strike, a worker strikes, and general strikes for a Green New Deal. Shut it all down now.
Let's fucking shut this shit down. Let's follow an abolitionist trajectory of emancipatory struggle using our anti-capitalist compass to race to the shores of a radical Green New Deal so that we may begin building the golden square.
And we're talking about high quality, low carbon food, shelter, healthcare, and education for all, enshrined as human rights.
We'll cancel this neoliberal capitalist death cult for good.
If we do not, we're in big problems. We have to perish this stranglehold on us. We have to just open it up, make the valley open again.
All right. Well, let's keep raging against this machine next week.
See you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.